Froze.
Okay, I froze. Okay. All right, so like I was saying, we're here tonight.
Oh, boy. Vernell, you froze again?
Well, I'm gonna try to be a help till Vernell has her connection back. I know we are neighbors helping neighbors.
Yes.
And you're back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Vernell, I think you need
Yes.
to turn your camera off in order for the feed to come through. It's the same issue we had last week. Yeah, it should help.
Okay. Oh my, so I keep bouncing in and out. I'm sorry, guys. All right, so neighbor helping neighbors, our goal is to uplift, encourage, and to inspire neighbors to be involved in housing and civic matters so that we may better advocate for our rights and well-being. Tonight, our main focus is going to be on RAD, which is a federal program that many officials claim will fix and preserve public housing across the country for generations to come. RAD has been promoted as the solution for decades of underfunding by Congress. The underfunding has led to the deteriorating living conditions and quality of life for residents in NYCHA. In Rockaway alone, there are 6,000 of us living in public housing developments, and we all are experiencing the backlash of how the underfunding of NYCHA is affecting our lives. In fact, in 2019, a team of us went out to survey just over 6,000 of our neighbors in Rockaway. We wanted to investigate the conditions in a more systematic way. We found that 81% of our neighbors surveyed needed immediate repairs in their apartments. 1/4 said that their living conditions affected their physical health, such as having asthma or developing it. And 1/3 said that their living conditions directly affected their mental health, adding greatly to stress and depression, which overall affected their well-being. NYCHA, the city, and HUD tell us that RAD will fix these problems. 5 years ago, NYCHA experimented with fixing the problems at Ocean Bay houses. But as in other places, is RAD working? We hear about the problems, and now NYCHA wants to convert all the developments out here in Rockaway. This is concerning because RAD has not received glowing reviews about the program. And as such, there's a lot of fear circulating among our neighbors. So tonight, we wanted to bring as many of our neighbors together to get clear on the facts. NYCHA is going to give us an overview of the RAD PACT program, and we'll have a graduate student from CUNY who will share additional research from legal advocates and researchers. We also want to share with you the results from a survey we conducted with residents at Ocean Bay houses this past winter. You'll also get an opportunity to hear from some of those residents and then examine for yourselves both sides. Determine for yourself the merits of the program and what should be done about it. At the end of the presentation, there'll be a question and answer period where you can respond and ask your questions. We'll also close out the meeting with a poll so we can check to see how everyone is feeling about RAD right now. Please keep in mind that tonight is only our first collective step. We will meet in weeks to come to further discuss what we hear tonight. We'll work on and develop a shared position on the RAD PACT, and we'll begin to take action. Although on the hot seat, I'm happy that NYCHA agreed to provide firsthand information about the PACT program and to also address some of the concerns raised tonight. If they're not concerned tonight, hopefully we'll be able to get a meeting again and we'll be able to follow up. So first will be NYCHA explaining the RAD program. After NYCHA speaks, I will ask folks to please hold off from asking any questions until we hear our survey evaluation and presenters from Ocean Bay houses. So all you gotta do is just jot down your question or put them in the chat, and we will get to them during the question and answer, the Q&A. We'd like to end this meeting on time. So without any more from me, I would like to move this meeting and get Mr. Curtis Williams, who's the Assistant Director for Community Development at NYCHA. He's going to present information about RAD PACT. Mr. Archer.
Hey, so I'm looking at Kimberly. So before you press your timer, I was trying to reach Vanell, and Vanell, you're doing a great job so far. I was trying to text you, and I know you was having some difficulty. We need to enable to share your screen so we can show our presentation.
Yeah, okay, okay. What's been happening is when I speak, I guess sharing my screen messes up the.
Yeah, it should be within your settings, like you as the administrator will have to enable
So
that.
actually, I just did that. I just made you the co-host, Curtis. Can you share your
Okay.
screen or not?
And
Let
so
me know if
it's
it doesn't work.
myself and Simon.
Who's sharing the slides? Only one of you.
I'll be sharing the slides. It'll be me,
Okay.
Simon.
Thank you. And so good evening to everyone. Good evening. I see a lot of familiar faces and names. So those that don't know me, again, my name is Curtis Williams, Assistant Director with Community Development. A few things that I wanted to point out. Okay, Kimberly. I wanted to point out that one, no decisions. I live in Rockaway, and so I hear a lot of conversations. So no decisions have been made for the Rockaways. We've only had preliminary conversations with the resident leaders, but no decision has actually been made. And this is not a force thing where we're forcing anyone to be part of the program. We have simply presented the information, and moving forward, we would definitely like to have an opportunity to have more of these type of meetings with each development. I see a lot of individuals that are on that are calling in. And one of the things we can do if we're having like a development specific meeting, we can already circulate the presentation beforehand. That way residents can be able to see that. So with that said, again, we have a presentation that we put together for y'all. I'm sure everyone have a lot of questions. But again, just wanted to clarify that nothing has been written in stone for the Rockaway. We've only had preliminary conversations. And so with that said, we'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Simon, Vice President for Portfolio Planning with Real Estate. Can everyone see the screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Curtis. And thank you, Ms. Robinson and everybody for hosting this meeting tonight and inviting us to come and speak. We've been asked to give some information about the PACT program and how it works. And then we'll also be available, we'll stay on, of course, at the end of the meeting to take some questions from you all. So just to dive right in, I heard some interesting statistics that Ms. Robinson mentioned that were gleaned during the surveys about residents not receiving the kinds of services that they require for a safe and stable quality of life. And we often start our meetings just by reiterating what NYCHA's mission is and honestly acknowledging that we know that we're struggling to achieve this goal. Our goal is to provide safe, affordable housing for our communities and our families and facilitating access to social and community services. That's something that we've been challenged to do for a whole number of different reasons and most acutely in recent years. The root of the problem, no surprise to many of you, is resources, funding. We use the chart over here to show, just in plain terms, the magnitude of that challenge. Not going to be a surprise to many of you on the call tonight. What this is showing in blue, the blue bars, is the level of funding that we need to fully modernize our housing stock and bring it into a state of repair that can provide you all with stable, affordable housing and a high quality of life. That number has increased exponentially since 2006, when we thought we needed $6.6 billion, to 2017, when that number increased to $31.8 billion. Today, in 2022, you often hear the $40 billion number. That's what we estimate we would need to fully renovate and repair our housing stock. The orange bars actually show the level of funding we receive from the federal government each year to make those repairs. And in 2017, that level of funding was less than $5 billion. You can see how it really pales in comparison to the extraordinary need that we have. Now, one of the tools that we do have to bring full repairs to our developments is called the PACT program. This makes use of the Federal Rental Assistance Demonstration, or RAD. And it was launched by the federal government, by HUD, in 2012 to essentially transition traditional public housing from one funding source to another funding source. From the Section 9 program, which funds funds public housing, and which we know has not kept pace with the level of funding that's required to actually maintain and operate our housing adequately, to the project-based Section 8 program. And the project-based Section 8 program is important for two key reasons. First and foremost, it provides us with a greater level of subsidy from HUD each year. So for every apartment that we include in the Section 8 program, we get more funding to take care of that apartment than we do in the Section 9 program. The second really important feature is that it's a more stable source of funding. So public housing is really subject to congressional allocations each year. How much do they want to fund public housing? And that gets split up among all of the public housing authorities across the country. Project-based Section 8 is funded through a long-term contract, a 20-year contract that by law has to be renewed. And because we have that stability, that contract from the federal government that says this is the amount of money you're going to get each year, it's going to increase this much each year, and it's guaranteed in perpetuity, we can take that to a bank and we can essentially take out a mortgage to raise money for all of the upfront repairs that we need to make today. And the way that we implement the program, and the reason we call it PACT, is because we implement RAD in a very specific way in New York City. The lenders that we use are not private lenders. We go to a public bank. We go to the city's Affordable Housing Finance Agency, the same agency that funds all of the preservation and new construction of affordable housing that you see happening across the city. We're tapping into that finally and able to leverage that funding to now invest in public housing for the first time. Really importantly, the way that HUD, and the reason that HUD set up the RAD program, was in exchange for giving us this more lucrative and more valuable project-based Section 8 funding, they want to ensure that residents retain the same rights that they have as public housing residents. So everybody who's a current public housing resident transitioning into project-based Section 8 is essentially grandfathered. They have rights that other project-based Section 8 households do not have, and those are equivalent, if not exactly the same as the rights that you have in public housing. They also require that we present a plan and commit to addressing all of the documented repair needs at your development immediately. So the way that PACT works in New York City that we implement RAD is through partnerships with nonprofit and for-profit development companies. It truly is a partnership, and this is the way that it works here. So we will identify a team of organizations, a developer, a general contractor, a property manager, and a social service provider who will conduct all of those repairs. They will manage your development over the long term. And they'll also provide enhanced services. So we actually require our partners to fund enhanced social services on site This can include a whole range of things, but as a baseline, we want our teams to be providing dedicated on-site case management and social work assistance, and also bringing in other kinds of social assistance, and really anything that residents identify as a need into the community, as well as be a resource to refer people out to other resources that are available in the city. NYCHA's role changes, so we are no longer going to be managing your development. We retain the full ownership of the property. We actually enter into a long-term lease agreement with these partners, and they assume responsibility for all of the maintenance and repairs, the management and operations of your development. If you have a repair request, they will take care of it. If you are dealing with some other kind of issue on your site, they will be the ones that you go to. However, NYCHA is now in an oversight role. So we monitor all of the work that the partners are doing. We still stay involved with you, and you can always come to us if there are any issues that need to be resolved, and we can always step in and make sure that our partners are performing to the level that we expect. Really importantly, we also continue to administer the funding. So we hold the purse strings. Residents at a PACT development will continue to come to us to certify their income, and NYCHA sets the rent. So the new property manager has nothing to do with how rents are set or what rents they can charge each household. We tell them what they can charge, and it's based on your income, same as it is today. We also manage the wait list. So any apartments that become vacant, they have to be tenanted by our NYCHA Section 8 wait list. The partners, the property manager cannot lease those units to anybody other than who NYCHA tells them that they can lease them to. And so the types of improvements that we make at PACT developments are comprehensive in nature. These are some of the big areas that we focus on, but they're not everything. So just to give you a sense, all the public spaces receive improvements and upgrades, the landscaping and gathering places, the playgrounds and parks. The buildings, the common areas and lobbies and hallways and stairwells, also community facilities and community centers. The building systems, really importantly, so our boilers and hot water heaters, our roofs and facades, our elevators and electrical equipment. And then in apartments, we'll typically replace all kitchens and bathrooms, provide new flooring, and also replace the windows. But this is really our chance, because we're investing such a large amount of money all up front at one time. This is our chance to go behind the walls. So we'll typically consult with every household across the development way before the work is expected to start. And we want to hear from you about what issues you're dealing with in your apartment. We may come and look in your apartment one day, but a worker had just been there and patched up a corner of the wall that is continuously leaking. And in 2 months' time, there's going to be mold forming there again, and that's going to need to be addressed. Well, that's your opportunity to tell us where those problem areas are, and we can actually go behind the walls, replace the plumbing, and really get to the root causes of those issues that are plaguing you all in many different ways. I'll also mention security, though it's not listed here, is a really big focus. And these are plans in addition to security that really need to get worked out with you in the driver's seat. I'll talk a little bit about what that process looks like, but we're not interested in just making upgrades and improvements to say that we did it. We measure our success by your satisfaction and our ability to address the needs and goals that you identify in the beginning of the process, and take a lot of pride in really partnering with our residents to make sure that we're realizing their goals. These are just some larger pictures of some of the improvements. This is a kitchen at Bayside. This is a courtyard with a new mural that was created at Betances in the Bronx. On the left is the outdoor space where at Baychester houses in the Bronx, where they host their family days and other events. And then on the right is a recently renovated lobby at Betances with new elevators and mail area. So really importantly, these are the rights that you all care about. When we talk about the rights that are preserved and protected through PACT, rent is always going to be 30% of your household income. That is calculated in the same exact way it's calculated in public housing right now, and it will not change. Resident associations will still continue to have the right to organize and receive their TPA funding. All residents have the right to renew their leases. So As a NYCHA resident, you don't have to sign your lease every year, every 2 years as it expires. It's automatically renewed, and it works in the same way for project-based Section 8 as well. Not being rescreened. So I mentioned that anyone who's a current resident transitioning through PACT will be allowed to stay and benefit from all of these improvements and all of these rights. We don't look at your income. We don't look at your family composition or your apartment size. You are not screened, meaning that we automatically sweep everybody into project-based Section 8 as long as you're a current existing qualified public housing resident. You have the same ability to add your household members, relatives to your lease in permanent or temporary basis. Permanent members would have succession rights in case you move on. There's a grievance hearing process, and then also same as for our capital projects, PACT has to comply with Section 3. So residents are offered job opportunities in connection with the construction and the property management. So these are all the projects that we've been involved with across the city. Ocean Bay Bayside was the first where we tested this program, and that started construction in 2016. I have a slide that talks a little bit more about that project. I know you're all familiar with it. But since then, we've really ramped up. Our goal is to fully renovate a third of NYCHA's housing stock, 62,000 apartments, through the PACT program in the coming years. And so we're already about halfway there in terms of already started or completed construction or in the planning and resident engagement stage. We've already started construction over 15,000 apartments across the city at 58 developments. And we're currently engaging with residents at about 75 developments comprising just under 20,000 apartments. So overall, in terms of what we have in the pipeline, what we're actively working on, that's supposed to realize close to $7 billion in investment in just the coming year. So a really exciting opportunity, again, to make really life-changing and substantial investments in our communities. Of course, just making those investments is a top priority, but I also want to be really clear that we also see this as an opportunity to make other kinds of investments. So those kinds of softer investments, we really want to make sure that everything we're doing is geared towards improving your quality of life and achieving your goals. We can also bring in additional social services and programming. The photo here is actually a rendering of the proposal that was just announced at the Fulton and Elliott Chelsea development in Manhattan. It's not only going to include the renovation of their developments, but also the creation of a brand new community center on their grounds. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I say it's an opportunity to invest in other areas and bring other resources and amenities to our communities. And again, all of this needs to be underpinned by meaningful engagement and participation of residents. You are the experts of your homes and your communities, and you need to be at the decision-making table with us if these projects are going to be successful. We've been making quite a lot of changes to our process generally. I also want to be really clear that this is a long process. Nobody's going to come in and say that we're doing PACT here, you got to deal with it. We'll let you know what the next steps are. All across the city, the way that we approach these projects now is we actually engage with resident leaders first. And with their blessing, we then move on to give presentations to the wider resident community. We don't jump in and just say, we're doing this project, deal with it. And again, that's why we haven't actually hosted a NYCHA-sponsored meeting in the Rockaways, because at this point, we've only started to have this conversation with resident leaders. They have not given us the sign off to take this to the wider community. We've been invited to different events and meetings and tours that they've done. And so we're continuing to do that, but nobody's saying that, we're converting the Rockaways tomorrow. And the process we go through really does take us through all the steps of a design process. So in the beginning, if we were given the green light to do this here, we really want to start engaging with residents to, one, educate them about what this program is and what it isn't, what the road ahead would look like, and then really start to dig into what your needs are and how we can work together to best address those needs. So, I've listed a whole range of different activities and things that we would prioritize in each step along the way to do those things. I'm not going to go into everything. It'll be up to us as partners to really design the project. We bring in the partners, the developers and contractors and architects to really put them to work in service of you, to think through, what kinds of improvements do you want in your apartments? What kinds of security plans are best suited to your development? How should they best serve you as a property manager and provide the best kind of customer service that you all need? I'll also say that we changed our processes quite a bit since Bayside, and residents actually get to help us choose who those partners are. So I can speak a little bit more to that later, but essentially you're at the table with us interviewing people who are proposing to work on this development, be your developer and your contractors. And you get to decide who those people are, who those organizations are that are going to be doing the work. And the goal there is really to make sure that you have trust and you have confidence in who these organizations are, who are going to be your partners over the long haul here. But typically, from getting the green light to proceed to when we can start renovations, it's about a 2-year process. So this is, again, a really long road, and there's a lot of things to do. I mean, just in terms of HUD approval, et cetera, but also to make sure that we're not missing anything, that we're making sure we're identifying all the needs in every apartment and across the development so that we can really put this funding to the best use possible. Some of the changes I already mentioned, that residents get to select who the PACT partners are. We also have a new initiative where you may not trust working with NYCHA, and I fully understand that. We can actually pay for you to be represented by independent organizations, consultants, advisors, community development organizations who can advise you, who can be a liaison between you and NYCHA, who can push NYCHA to address your needs. There's a lot of flexibility in how that could work, but can definitely delve into that a little bit more as well. Something that we also provide at every development now going through the PACT process is free legal assistance. So we have a partnership with the Legal Aid Society. They run a hotline, and there's a lot of anxiety that people have about this. A lot of benefits, and I completely understand why this change could make people nervous. So we wanted to make sure there's free legal assistance. You can talk to an independent attorney about your specific circumstance or ask questions that you maybe are nervous about asking NYCHA directly, and they can help you figure that out. Everybody has to sign a new lease because of the nature of this work. And the Legal Aid Society, again, is available to help you navigate that lease signing process. They've actually vetted the lease and signed off on it as we adapted it for this program. Again, all of this has happened since the Bayside project. These are just some more photos from Bayside. Again, this project transitioned to project-based Section 8 in 2016, and renovations were finished in 2018. We actually were able to raise about $317 million in funding to make repairs to this development. That was supplemented by about $100 million in money from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to really support resiliency improvements to protect it from flooding events. And here are the PACT partners who are involved at that development, including Wavecrest and MDG, Catholic Charities, Brooklyn and Queens, and Ocean Bay Community Development Corporation. So I'm almost done. You all know the developments that are included in the Rockaways. I just have them here as a reference point, and I can pull these back up if needed during the Q&A. But I also have this information at the development level. But I just wanted to highlight, the level of resources that we would be able to raise if all of the developments, and again, this isn't a zero-sum game. There may be some developments that are interested in PACT in the Rockaways, and there may be none that are. There may be all of you that are interested in it, and that would all be okay as well. But if we were to include all of the developments in the Rockaways in the PACT program, so that's about over 6,000 residents, we'd be able to raise just under $500 million through the PACT program to make investments in your communities. I've broken out here, what that investment could go towards. This is based on a needs assessment that was conducted in 2017. NYCHA does this every 5 years for its entire portfolio. That's kind of the best starting place that we have right now to understand, what kinds of needs, physical needs there are at our developments. But again, if we were to move forward with PACT, we would start that very robust and lengthy process to go back in and get a better and more refined understanding of what all of your needs are based on inspections, but also based on your lived experience. And that's the presentation. I know it was a lot of information. Curtis and I will be on the line to answer questions. I'm looking forward to hearing from the other presenters tonight. You can always email either of us if you have questions. We also have a hotline and a NYCHA PACT email address. I also encourage you to take a look at our website, on.nyc.gov/NYCHA-PACT. We have interactive maps. We're being fully transparent about all the developments that are in the program and where they are. You can look at recordings of meetings that we posted in other developments. And we have a lot of information, including information sheets, videos, and even some of our transaction documents, the real legal stuff is all posted there. Again, just trying to be fully transparent and open about how our program works and accessible to you in case there are any questions. So thank you again for inviting us tonight.
Okay, well, thank you again, both Mr. Williams and Mr. Kowalski. Next, we're going to hear from our friend. She's not necessarily a neighbor, but she's a graduate student of CUNY, and she's been working with us out here in Rockaway for almost a year. Christian Hackett.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? Like Vernell said, I'm a doctoral student at the CUNY Graduate Center doing some work on what's happening with public housing right now. And I also organize with public housing residents, my neighbors in Queensbridge, Ravenswood, and Astoria houses over here. I live in Astoria. So we're kind of neighbors. So what I was asked to do or share with you all today is some of the existing research and perspectives that are out there about what is actually happening with RAD from the perspective of residents, legal advocates, researchers, etc. So Kim, how much? Okay, that's what I was looking for. All right, so I'm gonna try not to go too quickly, but I wanna make sure I get this stuff in. So one of the first things I'll mention, so there has been some support from the program. This one woman, a TA president at Betances, Sandra Gross, as well as another longtime resident at Baychester, Rafael Orondo, did write an op-ed not that long ago in 2020 saying that RAD did deliver on all its promises. And there has been some support from TA presidents, specifically at a few different developments, including also at Fulton Houses, from Miguel Acevedo. But also through word of mouth as an organizer myself, I have heard some conflicting information. So I thought I would start here as well before I get into the more systematic research. So some of the things that I've heard from tenants at Fulton, Harlem River Houses, Fulton Houses, and Williams Plaza is that folks were organizing for almost a year, over a year. Folks at Fulton Houses were organizing against RAD for 2 years. Fulton Houses had a petition signed by the majority heads of households in their building that was opposing RAD. All of those developments eventually were converted to RAD. At Fulton Houses, in order to suppress the opposition from tenants, an external working group was created, mostly nonprofits, representatives, policy leaders, and elected officials. Only 22 residents out of a few thousand sat on that working group and were included in decisions. Some of the tenants that were opposing the RAD conversion did lobby their elected official to get onto that working group. They were not taken seriously when they talked about alternatives to RAD. And they specifically were interested in resident management corporation through Section 9 funding. The tenant leaders that I know at those developments who were leading the organization also experienced harassment by NYCHA, police, and the new management. Another sort of tenant-based perspective that might be of interest to folks here is in May of 2021, we organized Justice for All Coalition and tenants at Harlem River and other organizers around the city organized a truth commission on RAD PACT, which included 9 residents from across New York City, various developments that either had converted to RAD or were in the process of converting to RAD, as well as 5 residents and 3 organizers from other cities, including Boston, Minneapolis, and the Bay Area. And everybody was invited to talk about or give testimony, 5 minutes or so, on their experience living through RAD conversion and the aftermath of RAD conversion. And this was equally depressing. So we heard about harassment by private management, continued deterioration of the interior of the buildings, new rules that were restricting tenants from using the properties, like especially the outside of the properties, and public spaces, and new fines for violating rules. So I want to now kind of, and then also I'll share a couple legal perspectives. So these are 2 excerpts from 2 op-eds. David Prater here is an attorney with Disability Rights Maryland and was working with residents in Baltimore. Norman Siegel was working with tenants at Fulton Houses, and he actually is created a report basically on how Fulton Houses might move towards resident management corporations, which was introduced to that working group that I mentioned. And what I heard was that he was laughed out of the room by elected officials. So fairly disrespectful. But what both of these lawyers basically point out, so David Prater asks, what is the public benefit is there in maintaining vacancies as high as 35% in RAD properties, while the wait list for these same units sits over 5,000 and climbs daily? What's the public benefit is there in terminating extremely low income seniors and persons with disabilities from their housing without affording them rights and benefits they enjoyed? So displacement was something he was witnessing. Norman Siegel also was really concerned about the introduction of private interests, which I'd highlight a little bit down here. Okay, so more systematic evaluations of RAD. Can you turn that? Okay. So one original official evaluations from HUD included no evaluation of the resident experience of the conversions, which shows kind of this sheer neglect that tenants are dealing with right now. It actually required a lot of lobbying by legal advocates, by Maxine Waters, the Democratic rep in California, as well as a report by the Government Accountability Office in order to get HUD to include any metrics related to the resident experience in their evaluations of RAD. But in their 2019 final report, as they said, meaning they're not necessarily intending to do further evaluations, they only surveyed 298 residents out of over 103,000 units that had converted. So they only talked to less than 1% of residents who experienced conversion. Which is really just bad research, to be honest. You can't really tell much from that kind of an evaluation. Okay, the National Housing Law Project is an independent legal advocacy group. They worked with residents across multiple cities across the country who were dealing with RAD conversions, and they were mostly working with folks in a capacity, like in a legal capacity, but obviously they had been collecting a lot of documentation during the course of that work and supporting tenants. And basically in 2017, they outlined all of their concerns about what their research and data was showing about RAD, and sent a letter to Ben Carson, basically saying this program is not doing well for residents. Some of their concerns was lack of transparency before, during, and after RAD conversions, a lack of resident education. PHAs had inadequate relocation policies. PHAs and owners frequently interfered with tenant organizing activities, similar to what we've seen in New York City. Residents were routinely re-screened, even though they were told they would not be. Explicit violations of fair housing and civil rights law were identified, such as discrimination, failure to provide reasonable accommodations to residents with disabilities, and failure to provide translation services. And residents were told that they had to move a significant distance away from their communities if they wanted to be transferred. Okay, so as the guy from NYCHA mentioned, RAD PACT is what we call RAD in New York City. That's this version that we're implementing here. And it is slightly different, as he mentioned, particularly, supposedly there are more opportunities for resident engagement, which he talked about. But what we're finding through recent research is that that's not necessarily making a difference in terms of the resident experience of conversion or even the aftermath of RAD. And even so, a report from the Citizens Housing and Planning Council, this is a group actually that supported RAD, that is in favor of it, actually found also some negative findings. So their main findings were like, okay, so great, the number of maintenance work orders are down, rent collection is up, energy use is down, and residents are broadly satisfied. But they also found that apartment turnover rose. That means evictions or displacement. And also that re-rental times is longer. So similar to what David Prater was saying, there's a lot of vacancies that are being left open after conversions, even though there are these extensive long waiting lists. And this was on New York City specifically, just to say that again. Now, the next study is perhaps the most compelling nationally, as well as here in New York, and it's also the most recent. So this was conducted by Human Rights Watch, and it was 6 different developments that had been converted to RAD, but they also did a much more extensive study on what public housing means to residents and what it would mean not to have public housing and what it has meant for their families over past generations. Their research into RAD basically led them to sending a letter, an emergency letter to Congress in 2021, demanding that the federal government fund Section 9 public housing now. And the reasons why they sent that letter is, one, because they found that the disinvestment by Congress over time has increased and has constituted a violation of tenants' human rights because of the living conditions that tenants are having to deal with on a daily basis. They also found that in general, across all the developments, all 6 developments, that RAD led to an erosion of tenants' rights and protections. It also found that there were increased evictions at 2 developments. One is Ocean Bay Houses. The other is Betances, which is the same development that the TA president, Sandra Gross, wrote from, right? So she's the TA president there. She wrote a glowing review, but that's also the other development where there's a high number of evictions that took place. And yeah, the general finding was that RAD, the last reason for supporting Section 9 was that RAD, and overall in their findings, does not improve living conditions or the quality of life for most tenants. Okay, so a couple evaluations specifically of RAD. I'm going to gloss through these a couple, like I'll show you where you can find all this information afterwards, but I know I'm getting down to my time. Okay, so evictions at Ocean Bay Houses were found to increase. There's one study by Enterprise Community. Again, this is actually a group that supports RAD. But they found, one, that evictions at Ocean Bay Houses increased, and that NYCHA undercounted those eviction increases. And then also that kind of led to a second study by people who are like more independent, the Anti-Eviction Mapping Project and City Limits, which is a citywide publication. And they found that evictions at Ocean Bay Houses increased drastically. 80 evictions between January 2017 and February 2019, which was more than twice the second highest eviction. Okay. Now, all of this, you know, we can take this as kind of a mixed assessment, perhaps. And this is what drove Neighbors Helping Neighbors to conduct their own survey of Ocean Bay Houses. They wanted to get the facts and the truth. And so I'm going to share a little bit about the survey that they found today. So they talked to 137 residents at Ocean Bay houses, which is 10% of the households. They interviewed folks or surveyed them between November 2021 and January 2022, relatively recently. And just so you know, that's about 5 years after the conversion. So that's like also significant, right? It's a substantial time since the conversion took place. 115 of those surveyed lived there before and after the conversion. 92 had lived there for more than 10 years. 20 had lived there for more than 40 years. So these were mostly long-term residents who had been there before the conversion, during the conversion, and after the conversion. So here are just a glossary, an overview of the findings. So about a quarter, 25% or so, were unsatisfied with their housing and quality of life and would move if they could. 40% said that it had gotten worse and much worse in terms of the private management versus NYCHA. 21% said that it was harder to get repair needs met now, while 35% said it's about the same, not necessarily better than RAD. 35% said there's not really an easy to use system for submitting repairs for requests. 61% said their rent had gone up. 19% said management had tried to evict them, and 18% said that a neighbor they knew were threatened with eviction or were evicted. Additional comments on changes included, so 29.3% noted specifically positive changes. So 18 said it was cleaner, 9 people said it was safer, 5 people said there were improvements like painting, new cabinets, new floors, and repairs, and 5 noted that rules were now enforced, so people weren't smoking in the buildings and people had to pick up their dog waste outside. About the same amount specifically noted negative changes. So 16 people noted specific issues with management, which included high staff turnover, that they couldn't get a hold of management on the phone, and that their water was shut off at random and without warning. 9 people were really concerned that the stairs in their buildings were locked and that they could not get in there and that this was a fire hazard. 5 people noted increased fees, that the laundry room was too expensive, that it now costs $15 to replace a key card. And if you broke any of the new rules, it was a $500 fine. And then 8 noted new restrictions, that you couldn't barbecue outside anymore, that you couldn't access community spaces, that there were strict rules around decorating your hallways, even having a little mat outside of your door. And I know I'm running out of time, Kim. I only have 30 seconds left. So I just wanted to note like one final survey, which is with that residents at Williams Plaza had also done. It was much shorter than the survey that Neighbors Helping Neighbors did at Ocean Bay houses, but Williams Plaza converted later. So I think it's worth sharing their experience. They surveyed 40 neighbors across 3 different buildings. They found that 78% said they were unsatisfied with the private management and the construction team. 70% said safety protocols were not being followed when repairs were being made in their homes. 90% said quality of life had not improved since the conversion had taken place. 87.5% said the bathroom renovations made their bathrooms worse. And 95% said they do not feel safer or more secure under private management. I know for a fact that the lead organizers there have been experiencing extreme harassment, and also that they are concerned that actually there's been a tremendous amount of COVID death related to the lack of safety protocols around construction, which they were organizing around and got a lot of media and press attention about, and yet did not make a difference. So the last thing I'll say is that we are putting all of this stuff online so that everybody can find it whenever they need to or want to, or you can review it in your own time, including the presentations that I've just shared with you tonight. So I'm still finishing the website, but it is online. So you can probably find it at radpact.info by the end of the week. Thank you for your time. Thank you for timekeeping, Kim. And I'll pass it over to Margaret, I think, right?
Oh shoot. Yes. Hi, everybody. We called a few people that live in Ocean Bay to explain to you for 1 or 2 minutes what they like about RAD and what they don't, what problems they see, and do they like living under RAD better than they do under NYCHA. So what I'm gonna do, because I was checking out to see which of the people who really came, because I did speak to a few of them today. So I'm gonna call Louis Valnena. Is he on the line? Louis, going once, going twice? No.
Yeah, my name is Louis.
Okay,
But
you're on. Okay, please give us like about 2 minutes of your experiences living on the RAD, and where do you live?
I don't live there. My grandmother does. So
Okay.
are you sure that you're speaking to the right Louis? Is it not like another
Yes.
like Louis E?
Renault?
Eusebio.
Right.
Okay, go ahead, Louis.
Okay.
So what I've seen, my grandmother's been living there. She's having a positive experience. So there's nothing really to complain about. The only thing that they have been making it difficult for us to like do a transfer. So that's the only issue. They're good with heating, they're good with water. The hallways are clean. Neighbors are very orderly, they're very respectful, so there's not really that much of an issue over there. She just wants to move close to me and her daughter. I'm a grandson and her daughter.
I live.
Oh, she can talk. She can talk. She knows a little bit of English.
I live in the 5 Rockaway. In the building and in the 5409 Armida Avenue, apartment 36, 3A. And the happiness I like to go concert to move it to the other place in the Bronx because that's too far for me. Our family live in Bronx. I like if you can find one apartment to move it in the Bronx near my family because the price is too far for the ticket train. It's not easy for me. I have the big Mac ready. I no can leave it too far the family. I have my daughter ¿cómo se llama?
Younger.
No en York, el preso donde me operaron, Montefiore. That's the daughter place, you know.
Oh, okay, thank you, Mrs.
Yes, thank
Lewis's
you very
mother.
much.
But I hope maybe Curtis, if we give you that information, that maybe you can help them. So is that okay, Mr. Curtis? You
Yeah,
think you can
absolutely.
advocate?
I was just
Okay,
trying
thank
to,
you.
I'm not a fast typer. I was just trying to type Louis, my
Okay,
information.
Renell
so
will
you can
give you
return.
that information, okay?
Okay, awesome.
Okay,
Thank you. I appreciate
the
that.
next one is, thank you so much. Laura Hall, are you on the line? Laura Hall? Okay, going once, going twice. I don't hear from her. So the next one is gonna be Jennifer Roebuck. Are you on the line? I spoke to her earlier. She said she was sleeping, but she would be here. Jennifer? She had a lot of problems. I really wanted her to share. Okay, she's not there. So the next one is Mr. Vizel Smith. Are you on the line, Mr. Vizel Smith? He had texted me earlier that he had a family emergency, but I wasn't sure, was he gonna go on the line anyway? Mr. Vizel Smith, I don't see his information. All right. The next one is gonna be Miss Nicole Prato. So I guess, Kim, if you can give her 3 minutes since these other people didn't come on. Miss Nicole, I saw your number on the line. Miss Nicole, please unmute yourself. Did she get off?
I think it's
I don't know how to unmute herself, just in case you forgot.
She's okay. I forgot, Brenda, what did we say for the ones that wanted to mute that's on the phone? Star what?
Star 6.
Star 6, if you're on the phone, Miss Nicole. *6. I know I saw her number earlier.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Cole,
Oh.
that's you?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead and speak. Thank you so much. You got 3 minutes.
Well, I'm Nicole. I'm actually Sergeant at Arms here at Ocean Bay. I do like RAD myself for certain reasons. One would be I do feel safer because we do have a camera system. As far as repairs go, they kind of more timely manner than NYCHA would be. They have addressed a lot of my issues that I had when it was NYCHA. And it's cleaner. The people that do clean, do clean. I don't know what else you want to know, so.
Okay, tell me, you said you feel safer when we spoke because the cameras are there, and if you had cameras before, when you had an incident, you think that person would have been, go ahead, speak about that.
I had an incident back in 2018 where I'm not sure, be quiet, I'm not sure if the cameras were working, but I was nearly killed in here. And I feel if the cameras were working, it, you know.
Oh, I can't
But
hear
I
you.
really don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that.
Okay, I just wanted to just say that, you know, for the cameras, she feels much safer. And I know you said in your apartment, the tiles came up, but they did go and fix it again because that's the complaints people have been having, like cheap tiles or something like that. Go ahead.
I've also had black mold in the house that has been addressed. I've had leaks since before the conversion, and RAD is the only one, you know, to have fixed and address the problem. So that is actually a good thing.
Yes, it is. Okay. If you have nothing else to say, you still had 48 seconds left, but thank you so much. I just learned a lot from you. And I'm going to try Ms. Donna D4. Ms. Donna, are you on now? I know you had to eat earlier. Are you on now to speak to us?
Yes, I'm on. I'm on now.
Okay, Kim, she could get 3 minutes too, right? Because the other people didn't show. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Donna.
Well, you know, right now I'm retired, you know, working for the Board of Ed, and I've been living here for some years now. And when they came and did the reversion, I mean, it was hard, but you know, we lived through it and everything. And like anything else, you know, it could be difficult. But I like the program. It's been working for me. You know, some of my neighbors, you know, they haven't had too many complaints. You know, and what happened is that the biggest, I think, complaint that people are making is that when we go to do our recertification, that they don't follow through really well. We have a trouble, like there's a senior citizens that live here, and to have them come and have to go into the office or to do this recertification, some senior citizens don't even have a computer or things like that to try to get the information to them. You know, and I mean, they instead of saying like, can we make an appointment to come to you, they always ask the tenants to go to them. You know, so I mean, if there's Section 8 or some, you know, folks that are involved with that can try to make it so that the people who can be able to come to the, you know, senior citizens and get that done, they don't have to be worried too much about that. Because, you know, when you see that you don't do this and don't do that, they're like ready to, the other person said, they're ready to get ready to put you for eviction or something. So I think that they need to up or do better when it comes to the senior citizens and being able to, you know, look out for them in terms of that. And then also look at the way that they worked hard. I do see them working hard. I do see the cleaning. I do see things better in terms of that because of housing. I do see them respond a little faster than housing. So I think that there's some positives and, you know, and there's, you know, a few negatives like anything else. There are going to be a few negatives. We're not perfect. We're not living in a perfect city. We're not living in a perfect complex. So we will have problems. But as long as they do it attached it or time, you know, do it, catch us early and answer our requests early, that we can feel more confident in living here.
Okay. Oh, so are you finished, Miss Donna?
I guess, I mean, unless there's another question or whatever in terms of that, but I do feel that as senior citizens, we see a lot of senior citizens being attacked on, and other places in the city and things like that. So I think they do need to just do a little bit more of police, what do you call it, canvassing and stuff like that, so that they make sure that, the people are safe here. And I mean, they do have a serious thing about animals here. They don't want to have dogs to being too big, because you don't want your children or others attacked by a dog. So that's something that they have to look into a little bit more too. But other than that, everything seemed to be doing okay. But I mean, like I said, we getting the funding, so if the funding is going to help us do better, fine. If we go back to the old way and it's not going to help us do better, we don't get that funding, we're going to have a problem.
Okay, so that means you like living under RAD better than NYCHA, right?
Yes, so far that's what I
Okay.
see what's happening. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Pass it back to Ms. Burnell. Thank you for all the speakers. Burnell, you're muted.
Oh, boy. Okay, sorry about that. No, now we're gonna open it up for question and answers, actually. All right, so we've heard what NYCHA shared. We heard what Ms. Hackett shared, and we heard, we heard some of what the residents said. So we can open it up to the floor for anybody that may have a question.
Remember, you can go into the Zoom chat area and press the raise hand icon.
Marcia's hand is up.
Yeah, hello, this is Lewis, talking on behalf of my grandmother. So my question is, what would be the right process to request a transfer? Because every time I try to go and get a voucher or something like that, they tell me that they can't do it, or they have to go to a different facility or something like that, or I have to call this number, but the number is too helpful. So I'm just thinking that they have a mixed batch of information. We don't know which one is updated and when it's not. I mean, so I would like to know what would be the right steps to take so I can request a transfer from my grandmother, if possible.
Lewis, if you could, it sounded like the organizers were going to get us your contact information, but you can also direct message me, and we'll look into your specific case for your grandmother. Not sure exactly what's going on there, but we can get to the bottom of it. I do want to also just point out that as part of the PACT program, this is something that's not available to public housing residents, but in PACT, once you convert to project-based Section 8, after 1 year, you can apply to NYCHA to convert that project-based voucher to a mobile voucher. And if you're approved, you can take that voucher to live anywhere across the country that has a Section 8 program. You can live in private housing if you so desire. It's totally optional, but it is just another option that's available to residents who may want to move out of public housing, who may want to move to other communities or other cities to be with their family. So that is something that we can look into for you, and that's also available to residents in our PACT developments.
Thank you.
Well,
yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Marcia.
Okay, Miss Donna, I have a question for you. Miss Donna? Miss Donna?
Yes.
Okay, with the cameras, you do feel much safer?
Yes, I do feel much safer with the cameras, as long as they're working.
Okay, also, do you see many people hanging around, inside the building or on the grounds, drinking or smoking or whatever? Do you see that?
Well, I do see it once in a while, people are gonna do what they're gonna do. But we have new tenants in the area, so new tenants may not necessarily be familiar with some of the specifications or laws or whatever like that. But it would be nice if they just ask the rental office, or either ask some of the some of the, what do you call it, tenants association people, you know, what are the rules so they know exactly what they need to do and not do.
I see. I also saw y'all have fines for certain things inside the building too, or on the grounds.
I see some signs posted, but my thing is this, like anything else, wherever you live, you can live in a high-rise apartment in Manhattan and have signs and have fines. So my thing is that in order to preserve the area we live in and preserve the building and stuff like that, it would be good if they follow through on what they, you know, if they follow through for the fines for the dogs, and if the tenants would just follow through on trying to keep the place better.
Exactly. Again, it's the following through. So it sounds like that's the problem all the way around. Thank
Yep.
you.
You're welcome.
Someone texted me and asked, they wanted to know, because there's a problem with the recertification process. Even in our server, we found that people had to recert 2 times. So that's how it was that's how it is in Ocean Bay. So the question is, has that process changed?
That's a really good question, and actually something that's unique for Ocean Bay Bayside because of the funding sources that were received there. It involves the low-income housing tax credit program that's run by the state. The state actually does require a certification for themselves, and then HUD also requires a certification. And the HUD certification, the NYCHA one, is actually what's used to set the rent. The one that goes to the state is not used to set rent at all. But again, that's specific to Bayside. Developments in our PACT program do not typically take advantage of tax credits, and so residents only have to income certify income certify once a year, same as you do currently. And again, if your income changes for whatever reason, if you lose a job or your income decreases, you can always file an interim to have your rent adjusted accordingly.
I have a question. Again, with the 30% of the rent, I was one of the people that did the survey, stating that the people that work and that have the good jobs, they're having problems saving money because they have to put so much money in, where there was a flat rent for NYCHA. In that case, for them, they're paying like over $2,000 and something, and they're really struggling. So I see that's a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Can you
absolutely.
express that?
Yeah, and just as background for others on the call, there is what's known as a flat rent in public housing. So residents whose incomes have increased over time to a point where their rent as calculated at 30% of their income would exceed that flat rent level, actually have the rent capped. So what happens is a lot of NYCHA residents, I think overall it's about 6 or 8% of all of our families actually pay less than 30% of their income towards rent. And that's can be quite dramatic. Some pay like 25% towards rent, some pay 28, some pay 15% of their income towards rent, but it's effectively capped at that flat rent level. The flat rent actually doesn't exist in project-based Section 8. And so HUD actually, to account for this and make sure that residents aren't slapped with huge increases in their rent, actually allows for a phase-in. So your rent would increase to 30% of your income over 5 years. This is an issue that we've been hearing from a lot of people across the city. Actually, it's something that came up as part of the Fulton Working Group. And as a result of that work, we actually brought the problem to HUD, because it's not fair just because we're now providing you with all these renovations and improvements that you deserve, whether you're a public housing resident or a project-based Section 8 resident, for your rent to go up. And they've heard us, and we're actually working to implement a similar rent cap in the project-based Section 8 program. So going forward, anyone included in the program would also see their rent capped if they are in fact a high income earner. We have to figure out, if we are able to work with HUD to get this change made, we have to figure out how it would apply retroactively. So I know that doesn't necessarily solve the issues that some residents are dealing with right now, But it is something that we're working on for future projects, and would figure out a way to address retroactively as well to developments that have already converted.
Thank you. If nobody has a question, I have another question.
Yes, I have my hand
I see you
up.
have,
Okay, go
you have a
ahead.
lot of hands raised, yeah.
My hand's been
Sorry.
up for like 20 minutes.
Sorry.
So you go first. You go first.
Good afternoon, all. I'm gonna make it short and spicy because I know a lot of people have questions as well.
Hello.
My name is Craig Housen. I'm calling from I'm representing Williams Plaza Houses. We have recently been converted. And
Wow.
our experience through the conversion is horrific. I'm a military vet and an advocate in my community as well. And there's a concerted plan and effort to effectively end public housing across America through privatization.
Yeah.
And this has already started to unfold in New York City. And as we know, this is disproportionately affecting all the Blacks, Hispanics, and low-income people who reside in NYCHA. There's also a wave of evictions right now as we speak, as well as a bunch of human rights violation. And based on our research, this initiative is being financed and backed by large financial institutions such as Chase and Bank of America. The effects of RAD, PACT transition on low-income families and people of color has been the socioeconomic isolation and misrepresentation of the most neglected and vulnerable individuals of our society. RAD PACT lacks planning, oversight, and transparency. There are not enough provisions made to protect the rights of tenants and residents. NYCHA has totally absolved themselves of the responsibility that they would normally shoulder. There's no justifiable methods or criteria used to determine which complexes should be converted or which complexes should be given priority over others. For example, the complexes that are most in need of these repairs and enhancement were not even selected or looked at for conversion. According to our research, most converted complexes had a few things in common. These commonalities include close proximity to the waterfront or pier, close proximity to a subway system, or just in an overall good neighborhood, communities that would be considered prime real estate. There are numerous reports and cases of blatant racism, discrimination, and voter suppression, as well as voter fraud that have occurred as a part of the legal transfer of these buildings over to private ownership. This too should be viewed as a public safety issue affecting hundreds of thousands of NYCHA residents. There has been several confirmed reports of tenants being injured due to the manner in which construction is being done, combined with the low quality, unsafe materials being used, which is normally complemented by workers who seldomly wear PPE or protective equipment. There's absolutely no oversight at all, nor is there a body or group appointed to protect the rights of tenants from eviction, displacements, and other forms of harassment. There are no inspections being conducted to legitimize or scrutinize the work being done by vendors. When work orders are issued by the City of New York, these are often ignored and simply taken down by the contractors, as was the case in my complex of Williams Plaza houses in Williamsburg. Which brings me to the next point, skilled, competent workers. For projects of these magnitude and scale, why weren't unionized, qualified labor workers used for these undertakings? The workers are unqualified and incompetent. There are cases of workers fighting inside of tenants' apartments. There are several reports of stolen items from tenants' apartments. There are reports of workers entering homes without permission or the tenant's knowledge. This poses real safety issues. NYCHA's role in this is very irresponsible, and I might even go a step further and say criminal. The violation in these buildings continue and are getting worse and are getting increasingly worse on a day-to-day basis. Based on conversions with tenants undergoing similar privatization plans across the city and the country. These incidents are not isolated and should not be looked at as such. but are a part of an established plan and pattern. Since November of 2021 and February of this year, there has been close to 12 deaths in my complex of Williams Plaza. And this could be directly attributed to the way in which the construction was done. Residents and tenants were forced to stay in their apartments while the work was being done. This type of work included having bath fitters come in and put a fake plastic bath over your tile over your existing bathroom, whether it was already dilapidated, whether it was already mold infested. A part of this that wasn't thoroughly explained is the Section 3 hiring. These projects are supposed to bring NYCHA residents jobs. Nobody from my complex within the 2 years that this transition was taking place received a job, not one person. NYCHA has absolutely dropped the ball in terms of protecting our residents and our tenants. Nobody's even investigating the 12 deaths that happened in the space of 3 months. So I yield the floor. Thank you very much. My name is Craig Housen, tenant advocacy team from Williamsburg.
Thank you.
Please mute your mic if you're not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. I think it's Teresa. I didn't see the order that went up. I apologize. And we're gonna, because of the time.
Because I think there's a lot of hands up.
Yeah, no, I see. Wow. All right, so Teresa, well, let me see how many hands up. Would you guys mind if we extended this for 15 minutes so that we can actually take the poll and go get through these questions? If you have a problem with that, please stay on. The person, Teresa, you have a question?
Yes, I just want to ask a question. It seems like it's like two different stories basing on where everybody lives at. And so it doesn't give me or probably any of us that's on this phone, like the security to do it. The one thing I want to ask is that, what about us we have the section 9. So what happens to section 9 once we leave here? Because section 9 prevents and covers us with a lot of stuff that we would not, that we have here that we wouldn't have there. And it's like, I just think, it's like, is it really safe for us to go and do RAD if we're going to lose all these benefits? Because some of the people still complaining, like I'm physically challenged. So me trying to get out to get to that machine. First of all, the machine in my building was horrible. So for me to try to get to the machine, sometimes I didn't even have access to get to things. So I could be having a problem with things. And so there's just a lot of stuff that I just feel like, we're not getting, like they're getting the help. It's like they tell us this is a good plan, but they're not telling us what we're losing. And I'm complete. So is anyone answer that question?
So thank you for raising that. As I mentioned, HUD designed this program to make sure that all of your rights as a public housing resident are protected. And they stipulate those requirements in their regulations. So we have to abide by all those things. I listed out some of the key ones on the slide earlier, but those really important protections that you have are preserved, and HUD requires it. I do want to acknowledge, and others on the call have mentioned it, those who live at Bayside, the process of renovating is not an easy one. It's no surprise that you're hearing from the surveys that were conducted that a lot of residents who you spoke to who are actually in the midst of renovations are not able to see the benefits currently because that work is still ongoing. And I'm not going to make any bones about that process being messy. There are a lot of things, and I think having your resident leaders be very closely involved in that process and making sure that we're as coordinated as we can so that everyone understands what work is going to be done when, and everybody's aware of when that work's going to take place, what the impact is going to be, how and for how long they would be inconvenienced in their home is really important. We've been making a lot of changes to make sure that all of that is communicated appropriately. But of course, it's going to be inconvenient, it's going to be messy. But at the end of the day, we are hopeful that the results speak for themselves and that we by and large do have a lot of very happy residents at developments where that work has been finished.
And also, I would just add, residents are not forced to stay in their apartment for those type of repairs. And so I just wanted to clarify that we're not forcing residents to do that. Residents do have the opportunity to utilize what we call hospitality suites. And especially if you consider, for our vulnerable residents, if we have to open up walls and there's things like mold and lead that are issues, we don't make residents stay in those apartments.
Thank you. Philip G. And we're gonna take 2 more to do the poll.
Hi, how you doing? I'm gonna try to make this real quick. I'm Philip Gallup and I live in Ocean. I'm an Oceanside resident, right? And just a few days ago, I believe last week, I received an article, right, that said that this whole process has been, in fact, they talked about New York City NYCHA tenants has defeated the privatization legislation led by Assemblyman Khalil Anderson. So why are we even having this conversation?
Okay, what that was referring to was the blueprint. And this is RAD. So it's 2 different programs that NYCHA is presenting or has presented.
No, they're the same program. RAD, PACT,
Yes,
they're the
yes,
same
they
program.
are. Yes, they are.
Well, the practices are very similar, but in name they are different. And it's important that we establish that. I don't want to go against what Craig is saying in terms of how they operate and the tools that are being utilized in both programs. But one program has been put into law and approved by our federal government, allowing for 62,000 of our units to be converted, while the blueprint was an attempt to create a new public housing preservation trust. And that is what we're saying has been killed. So it's still a fight to make sure the blueprint doesn't get implemented. But the fight with RAD is, A, if you are someone who is in favor of RAD, you have to make sure that all the details are worked out. And B, if you are not in favor of RAD, you have to make sure that you voice that and that you understand that this is a voluntary program. No matter how much the housing authority tells you that you are forced in it, you have a right to reject this plan from coming to your development. And not just gonna fight you on it, but know that you do have a right to fight this from coming to your development.
Okay, my last thing. Earlier the gentleman said about PACT had the ability to draw from HUD money that's needed, right? So if that is the case, and I know that this money was the money that I assume you guys was getting, HUD had in place years ago before legislation changed it. Why can't we go back to that and let NYCHA stand on its own?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that would be great. When the Build Back Better plan was actively being discussed in Washington, a lot of questions we got were about why do we need to do the RAD PACT program when money's coming from Washington? And that bill has stalled. It has not moved forward. And so we're continue to be in the same situation that we're in, where NYCHA is not receiving additional funding. And there is no rescue package or rescue plan for public housing. I think it's important to remember that Section 8 is a federal program. So it's not like we are taking you away from federal subsidy. We are actually simply just changing the funding source that the federal government has to offer and trading it for a better source that provides more subsidy and that allows us to raise this money that we can invest in the development. That's the only reason that we're doing this. It's not to fundamentally change the nature of public housing. I mean, we talk about this all the time, that even though you're in a RAD PACT development, you're still a NYCHA resident. NYCHA still owns your property. We're still responsible for you. We still set your rents and tell the partners who can live in vacant units. So it's just a change. It's not fundamental shift in the nature of these communities, where it's only a resource that we're trying to tap into because it's the only one that exists.
I would love for you to back that. I'm Marquise, but I see Manny up there shaking his head too. But Manny, before you speak, the person at 419-7292, I saw your hand up for a while.
That's me, Vernell. Hi.
You have your hand
Hello?
up. Yeah, you have your hand up?
Yes.
You want to ask a question?
I just want to make a statement. Okay. My name is Miss Bradley. Miss Ruby's Bradley's daughter. My mother's a blessed 98-year-old who's been in housing, Ocean Bay, for almost 40 years. I'm her representative. I do her annual. They have interim. They have a midterm section that we have to fill out. You know, they'll put it in your door and you have to go fill it out. And then they have something at the end of the year. That's like 3 times a year. Okay. NYSA did not provide a smooth transition when RAD took over. That's another thing. The maintenance is poor and informal. Most of the time you have to leave a message and your request is never heard. You have to keep calling and calling to get repairs done in Ocean Bay. And as far as the Section 8, when I went to the RAD program with my mom, before they started the construction, they said Section 8 will only last a year. So someone brought that up earlier. It's not a lifetime Section 8 like they used to give. It only lasts a year. So even if you move somewhere, I would like to understand, how long does it last? Is it just a year? And one more thing. Being that I'm my mother's representative, someone from Section 8 called my phone at home. I don't live with my mother. I'm her representative. And they asked me about her income, and I gave them her income information over the phone. This is during 2020. So I said, well, yeah, you know, she's getting her Social Security and everything. And my son lives with my mother. So I said, let me call him and see if he's getting unemployment. I couldn't get through to him. I said, I think he get unemployment, but I'm not sure. I can't get through to him. So my mother went up from 247, I think, to 640 something. And it's been that way almost 2 years. When I called Section 8 to try to clarify, we tried to send information, but this was during the pandemic. So therefore it was hard to, you know, really reach out to someone. You leave a message, you call it 707, you call Ocean Bay, and they'll tell you call 707. So the interim change never happened, and the rent was still the same. We'll do credit, but who do we talk to? Can't get through to Section 8. Ocean Bay to tell you call Section 8. Section 8 don't call. So who am I supposed to talk to about trying to get even credit? My family do credit. And one more thing, boys, dogs. Some families have 2 and 3 dogs. They have receptacles out there for you to get the little plastic bags and clean up behind your dog. I don't even know if they refill them things because I'm not a dog owner, but I know they don't utilize it. Dog feces is all over. You can't even walk because you're dodging feces all over Ocean Bay. And as far as maintenance, my mother broke her hip in 2019. So they had to break her door in order to get her out, take her to the hospital. Okay. They kind of pieced the deal together that night or that next day. And I just put it to you like this. She broke her hip in 2019. We just got the door replaced like 2 months ago. And when I was calling, I said, well, you know, the door, the lock part was locked, but the top part was kicked out. And then the bottom part was kicked out. So, you know, the only closed section was where the lock was. And I said, you know, it's not good. The air come through there. I made a makeshift air blocker for the door, and I tried to tape it to keep the air from coming through and everything. They said they didn't have any doors. They didn't have any doors. And finally, I called in November, I think, November, December.
And I made another call, and they came and they did an inspection. They saw the door, and I showed them how I made the makeshift air blocker. He said, "We're gonna get you a door." Finally got a door from 2019 when my mother broke her hip, August 3rd, 2019. We just got the door about almost 2 months ago. So that's what I had to say. So just to piggyback on whether it's good or bad, yeah, it has its quirks. But far as just jumping into it and having RAD come, they need to settle what they're doing in Ocean Bay first. You know, there's a lot going on in Ocean Bay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Nigel, can you respond? And then Manny? Is there anything that you all can do to intervene with, because I've heard there was a complaint as we did the survey with people, they don't know who to go to with the complaint because you go to NYCHA put it off on the developers put it off on NYCHA or Section 8. So here's a person now talking about that problem.
Yes, and Vanessa, and so I believe you stated earlier, like everyone who has a complaint, you was going to make certain that we got the information directly, and so we can follow up with those residents.
Okay, so
On their behalf, yes.
Okay, that's it, Manny. And then we're gonna go into the poll, Manny.
Okay.
Yes, good evening. How you doing, Vanessa? How you doing, Marguerite? Curtis, how are you?
How you doing, sir?
So you were talking about rent caps. There is no rent caps on Section 8 because once a household surpasses 80% of the AMI, which is the area medium income, they lose the subsidy, and then you start paying fair market rate. Now, this is according to legislation. No one on this call can change legislation, right? These are, don't be wary of the lies that they're telling you, which is the first one. So now, if your household surpasses, which means that if you were to pay a flat rent, your household would surpass the 80% of the AMI, and you would pay fair market rate. You would go from 30% to potentially 60% of your household income. And that's for a lot of working families. And so we do have families that are paying 6% on a flat rent, but that's $1,500 a month versus someone paying 30% of their flat rent at $500 a month. So don't let them confuse you with the percentages, right? A lower percentage does not mean less money. And also, you know, I'm really disappointed that you're resorting to lies, complete lies to people and promising them things that will not come, right? Promising them something in the future and not stating what it is right now and how it is right now is a dubious factor from NYCHA, from the persons here on NYCHA, and that is a disregard to our respect. So please know that these persons are not being truthful. And so when they say things like NYCHA will still be there, that is not the truth. NYCHA will not be there. They're too concerned getting rid of all the other properties. We had too many examples throughout the city that NYCHA isn't there. And lastly, so that everyone knows, you have a legal right under Section 25 as a community vote to vote who your property manager will be, period. You organize that community vote. Do not engage in the slumlord list that NYCHA has accumulated and will demonstrate to you. Know your rights. Know that these folks are not telling you the truth, and you have to be aware. And with that, I digress.
Thank you, Manny.
Thank you, Manny. Thank you, Manny.
So I just want to clarify, I mean, others on the call can confirm, but I have stated on this call multiple times that the flat rent does not exist in Section 8. And I was pretty clear about that. I did mention that we are trying to change that. It's not a guaranteed thing, but we are working on it. And I want to clarify what Mr. Martinez stated, which is that rent would increase to 60% of income or high proportion of your income, and that's absolutely not true. The regulations at HUD governing the RAD program require that rent is always capped at 30% of your income. So if you pay the flat rent today, and you're a public housing resident, you are paying less than 30% of your income towards rent. If you transition to project-based Section 8 through this program, yes, because there's not a flat rent in Section 8, your rent would increase, but it would only increase to 30% of your income, no more than that.
And
just
if
to-
I just
and
want,
just to
to
add-
clarify though real quick, because you spent my narrative. The 60% is based off of your fair market rate of you paying
No,
fair
it has
market
nothing to
rent
do with
because you
fair
lose the
market.
subsidy at 80% of the AMI. So Mr. Kowitsky, can you please confirm that? Because legislation speaks to that and I can prove it. So you please tell me that Section 8 doesn't end after someone surpasses 80% of the
So
intermediate income.
So there is a difference between remember, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the presentation, there is a difference between traditional Section 8 and Section 8 that comes through this program. And there's a difference between the what's known as the mobile vouchers, the tenant-based vouchers, and the project-based vouchers. Under the project-based voucher program, if you transition through PACT, you are not going to be ineligible for subsidy just because your income increases. Regardless of your income, you're always going to pay 30% of your household income towards rent.
Even if it surpasses 80% of the AMI, because you're still not mentioning that. You're still talking about 30% of the household income.
Yes.
So please demonstrate
the one
to
thing,
us
so the one
where
thing to
it says
clarify,
that, because I've read the RAD legislation for project-based Section 8, and it's 80% of the AMI, and that is the basics for Section 8. 80% of the AMI, and you're saying something different, and you're lying to people. Please prove it.
So let me just say this before we go forward. And respectfully, Manny, we're not here to lie to anyone. And so I do take exception with that. We're here trying to give you the facts. Let's have one mic. For me, even personally, just being from Rockaway, with so many people I know here, I have no reason to lie to anyone, and we're not here to lie to anyone. And so let's just be mindful of that. Please let Simon explain. I think you are saying something slightly different, and he's trying to clarify that. But I would tell everybody on this call, especially ones I know, we have absolutely no reason to lie. But one thing Manny is pointing out to you all that I think you all just do your own research. You don't have to believe me. I don't know how long you knew me. I know a lot of you recently met Simon, but for those that know me for years, you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take Mr. Martinez's word for it. Please do your own research so you can feel comfortable, but no one is here coming to lie to you. That's just, something I just can't agree with.
But some people don't know how to understand these wordings and stuff like that. So
no, and I totally understand that, but I do take exception with the notion that we're lying to you all. You know what I mean? And I may understand that people may misunderstand
you
what's
can
being
wrap it as
said.
you want, but there certainly is a bending of the truth. Just the mere fact of saying that we're still government housing is a bending of the truth. The differences between Section 8 and public housing are real. Whatever Section 8 program you describe, there are real differences. And that's the reason why you want to do those conversions, because Section 9 prevents you from doing things like taking loans on the property, right? Like, what is the backing in the event that there's an inability to pay back the loans that were taken on these properties? There's no government protection against foreclosure, for example.
So Marquise, that's a different question you're asking. I'm just saying what has been presented so far, just the notion that there's been
Mr. Williams,
that's
since we're talking about what has been presented, you're saying that NYCHA provides accommodation. This is absolute bogus. I could present you with facts. The accommodation room that you're speaking of, let me explain this to everybody that's on the call. What they're talking about accommodation or calling accommodation is a room that they prepare for you to bring your family at 8 o'clock in the morning. And at 6 o'clock, you have to clean that room, take your food out of the refrigerator, and move back to your apartment that has been inhabited for the whole day with workers that has not been tested. That's NYCHA's explanation of accommodation. That's why 12 people passed away, and NYCHA has not even investigated the situation because these people were not provided with proper accommodation. I'm not lying, I'm speaking facts, and people died. People died as a result. So it's very insulting that you come on this line and saying that people are speaking a situation that's not factual. Come to Williams Plaza, you'll find out for yourself, sir.
And so again,
Thank
no
you.
one said that you was lying at Williams Plaza. So I know very well about Williams Plaza. And we can talk offline about Williams Plaza. I'm saying as it relates to what we presented with the Rockaways and the fact that we're presenting untruthful information. So that's why I took exception to it. And the
Your
only why I
Thank
took
you,
exception
guys.
to that,
being provided by NYSHA. That's the truth.
and I
Thank
disagree
you,
with it. And so,
everybody.
yes.
We have to move the meeting along because it's way over the time and we really need to go through this poll. So basically, we're working towards community consensus on a position we'll take concerning RAD. Whereas during our next step, our next meeting, we want everyone to be on the same page as we develop an action plans. Towards this goal, we'd like to make a poll now, just to see where folks are and how everybody's feeling about the RAD. You've heard a lot of different things. I know it's been a lot to absorb, okay? But we will come back to this again when we meet, and we just want to take a quick poll to see where everybody is, where everybody is at right now. Christian?
Yep, just give me one. Okay. So for people who are on the computer, like a poll should be popping up on your screen right now. And I'll leave it up for a minute or so, give people a chance. If anybody has any problems with that, you can chime in on the chat maybe, and I can try to support you. Unfortunately, if you're on the phone, I don't think there's a way to participate.
Can you explain?
You don't have
question-
Oceanside. Oh, yes,
Yeah,
you do.
can you
Sorry, I see
explain-
it.
Can you explain question one? I'm lost. I don't get it.
Sorry, that's actually, yeah, that's not the right question. I'm not sure what happened, but basically people should indicate what development they live in.
And if you don't live in any
Sorry.
development in Rockaway, please just put other. I will go through this and just.
Thank you, Vanell, thank y'all group for having this meeting. I'm really glad that I came. I really appreciate what y'all offering us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see the, is there a form or something we have to?
If you click the three buttons on the side, the three little dots, the poll was there. That's what my poll was. With the three dots on the phone.
She's, oh.
Oh, okay, you got it.
All right, while everybody's taking the poll, I want you guys to know that this
Hello?
is not.
Where's the poll at?
It's on the screen.
If you're on your phone, somebody just said that there should be three dots showing up on your phone. And if you don't see that though, then maybe you can't participate.
I see three dots. I see the three dots. I'm hitting it. Not the only thing. Oh, polls and quizzes. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Again, while we are waiting for the poll results to go in, I think this is a very lively meeting. We've heard both sides of the discussion on RAD. And while NYCHA says that they're not looking to come to Rockaway right now, we know that NYCHA has to do something to make the necessary repairs and different things in our apartments. So it's, if we, you know, if we, I don't know, we have to come up with some plan of action, because now I don't want to go into a trust deficit and all that other stuff about NYCHA. And if we can trust them or not, I don't want to open that can of worms. But I do want to say that what you heard tonight is real, all right? And we can further discuss this in our next meeting next week to find out what our next steps will be after we see this, the results of the poll. We'll just keep it moving so that we can put in a position. My thing is, I believe, until there is an evaluation of the program, of the RAD program, an acceptable one to see the experiences of residents. I think that, you know, like it was mentioned tonight, it should be held off for a minute until more evidence is presented on the experiences of residents. I know that money is a key factor in some of the evaluations that have been made, and that NYCHA is profiting, but to what it costs of residents. You know, I think we have to really get on the same page here, all right? So I don't know where we are with the poll. Christian, can you see, can you tell?
Yeah, it looks like 31 people have participated. I think it's slowing down now. So I guess I'll give if anybody wants to participate, do it now. Okay, you want me to show it?
I can't vote, so I don't see any access for me to vote.
Yeah, I think you're calling in on the phone without the software, so I don't think you can, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you, that's okay.
But if people want to chime in on the chat, the question really is just do you approve or disapprove of RAD, and do you want more information?
You can do, for those, just the idea, Kristen, for those who may want to vote, you might be able to tally a vote by having them raise their hand.
Yeah.
You would have to ask these questions separately, and for folks on the phone, to raise your hand, you can press *9.
Thank you, Marquise. That's good. We can do that. So I've already took down my questions. I think you would have to do that.
Okay, so I did end the poll now. So people, I think you can see it. I'm not sure what it looks like on the screen. So you can see here, I think most people on this call are from Carlton Manor, but we have folks from every different development. And again, only 32 people participated in this. So, okay, most people out of this poll are not sure about how they feel, which makes sense because this was a very back and forth conversation, but, and also most people want more information.
Okay.
Vernell, you want to say more?
Oh yeah, okay. So the more information, wait, let me see the proof. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at yeah, most of, so not, I'm not sure. We have a large percentage of that. So we're gonna get back together next week. We're gonna follow up with this conversation, okay? We'll have more information, more details about what's going on around RAD. Marquise is gonna share more in details about some of the actions that I don't see Ramona on the call. Okay, so Marcia, you want to close us out?
Yes. Well, we have certainly heard a lot tonight, and I want to thank everyone for joining us on our first RAD PACT Zoom meeting. We will let everyone know about the results next week on April 5th at 6:30. We, the neighbors, helping neighbors, are asking everyone to join us once again to hear two advocates speak. They will assist neighbors, helping neighbors, and working toward creating a position to take on RAD PACT. In a following meeting, we will develop demands and recommendations. Finally, toward a town hall meeting to release our RAD report. Thank you once again, everyone.
Okay. Again, everybody, thank you for participating in our meeting tonight.
Vernell, you're so welcome. It was our pleasure. And so anytime you need me, I'm a phone call away. And so, thank you again. Great job.
All right, guys.
Please, y'all share it with your neighbors. Share the link with your neighbors for next week because we need more people on here.
And everybody who's a part of the neighbors and neighbor helping neighbor, please stay on the call.